Well, hey, what's going on? This is your new best friend, Efren Tinoco, coming at you from North Memphis. Right now, I am at, again, the Valentine Evergreen Trail in this very lovely early September day. Um, Tempered enough. I do not think that my brow is going to sweat like prior videos. And I don't think I'm going to ramble on very much like in prior videos. I'll tell you, though, that I'm going to give you some more reflection and biblical reference, let's say, and historical reference to eventually consolidate my point. And when I was in college, I met a lot of people who were first time college students, and a lot of them wanted to get into either um, like traditional professions to become part of the upper class from the middle or lower, for example, like doctors, attorneys, accountants. Uh, Others wanted to become, like, get into finance or public service, as in work for the government, of course, as probably career bureaucrats, which is a pretty reliable way to join the upper middle class, but maybe not the lower upper class unless you obtained some sort of directorate or secretary position or ran for public office, and not in your local city council. But anyway, so yeah, I was surrounded by very ambitious people, and a lot of them, of course, were able to capitalize on their ambition. Happy to say that lately I've been able to get some success in that. Better late than never, of course. But anyhow, but a lot of these professions, I mean, not, some of them are general interest. Physicians serve everybody, engineers serve everybody, attorneys can serve everybody depending on what kind of practice you have. Accountants can serve everybody depending on what kind of practice you have. Well, anyway, one reason, one way to become very, very wealthy is to serve the wealthy, the very, very, very wealthy. Let's say you were to become an attorney for the super rich individuals, like their estate planners or their personal tax planners, as from the attorney side, or become an accountant for a corporate internal control department, or let's say you were to become a financial planner or a stockbroker for highly uh, high net worth individuals, like a personal service arm of Goldman Sachs, or someplace, or some of the other uh, uh, defunct organizations right now that used to rule Wall Street that were gobbled up by somebody else. But this is not a condition of modern society. This was a condition of society from the very beginning, basically, of maybe, well, as far as you can tell, as far as, uh, the Bronze Age, for example. But for sure, we have, um, we know about um, the clergy was a way to be very, uh, very well-to-do, uh, it coming up under a nothing to somebody. For example, you could, back in the day, let's say even the Pharisees back, why did the Israelites of the Bible, why were they, when they were under the rule of the Romans, why were they able to um, worship God and not Zeus and all the other, constellation of all those other man-made gods? Well, it was because the Pharisee, well, the clergy of the Israelites said, no, no, we'll let us keep our God. We'll keep the peace, and we'll keep things normal, and we will encourage people to pay their taxes, and we will encourage people to obey Rome and whoever you guys put in Damascus to lord over us, for example, and we'll be, everything will be hunky dory. And the Rome said, oh, all right, yeah, that makes sense. That's less conflict, whatever. And so they did. So the Pharisees, of course, were eventually unsuccessful in fooling certain key people within the Jewish community, namely the uh, cliff-dwelling ascetics of John the Baptist, of which his cousin Jesus was one, and the Zionists, the original Zionists, original Zionists who revolted, who didn't like Roman rule. Anyway, um, and there's examples of peasants in Bulgaria, Christian peasants in what is now Bulgaria, when it was part of the Ottoman Empire, um, and the young mothers would sell their, well, not sell, but they would uh, basically give away their children to not live a hard scrabble life in the countryside, but to live comfortably as a servant in the court of the Sultan. Um, in well, in what is now Istanbul, Constantinople, I guess it was, or Byzantium. Which one? I don't know. I should know this. What the name was back in that time. But anyhow, um, that was the um, so it was real. People, mothers would see their young teenage children go off into, hit the trail and go off towards the capital and become servants of the Sultan. It's a way to escape the farm. Um, you all know about the role of the clergy and the press and um, the no, well, basically, what I say, the press, the pulpit, and the government, the politicians. Oh, I forgot it was three P's. And establishing rural consensus for the Confederate cause up until the declaration of the war, in order to basically substantiate and protect the institution of slavery, which was uh, basically on its own not able to be protected because they didn't have the votes. They didn't have the votes in society to protect their institution. So they needed to make basically rural white folks cool with what that was. And they created especially with the work of the press, clergy, and the politicians, they created this consensus, a Dixie culture. And this is basically what and the echoes of it exist still today. But obviously, these people were champions of that power structure. There are people who were members of the Nazi Party who were not soldiers and not uh, official, they were not officers, but they were members of a party machination. There are people who work for the DNC. There are people who work for the RNC. There are people who work for um, either they have they're very entrepreneurial and they have their own radio stations to defend the uh, corporate and laissez-faire model today, and they work for MSNBC, or they fight culture wars uh, like folks on independent media who defend the most reactionary ravages of the champions of the RNC. And to be fair, on the other side of the aisle, you have Hillary and Bill Clinton, who through the foundation go globetrotting, and even as part of their official capacity within the of her role as Secretary of State, they go and raise money for their eventual presidential run, uh, and through selling influence through their foundation. And you approach the king of Saud, and he gives you a lot of money for your foundation, or you approach any number of big people in, like, who was the founder of Virgin Airlines. A lot of very high billionaires, um, in order to found your foundation. So if you get access to those guys, and you came up from less, then you can go from nothing to uh, you know a multimillionaire status. But very rarely do you become a billionaire solely by serving rich people. I guess Bernie Madoff tried to, or try to come off as he was going to, but he got in trouble for screwing rich people. Um, but so my point is, um, when you look at the, let's say the Russians are screwing with our elections, or you're looking at how the super rich or the corporations are um, taking over our law-making powers and processes to game the system for their own benefit. They have folks who do a lot of that work for them, for their benefit, and when they build consensus to distract, or to through culture wars, or through appeals for vapid hollow unity, or kumbaya diversity for its own sake, black people in high places, when I'm putting black folks in jail or keeping them longer than their sentences, for example. Be very wary, because these are because in a very highly populated society like ours, with lots of diverse people, the diverse occupation, diverse circumstances, the very, very, very rich, the oligarchs, top 0.01%, top 600 or so billionaires, need people to do the work for them. And these are people who are part of the press, the pulpits, and the politics. All of them are doing, they're basically blocking and tackling for these folks. I could, I think, I believe with my prowess of the English language and my ability to form arguments, I could make myself a pretty penny by coming to all of you and lying to your faces about what is wrong with this country. I could lie about such and such immigrant group, or such and such liberals, or such and such community of what is the new thing now? Cannibalistic child molesters, QAnon. Is that what that is? There's a lot of red herrings out there. I mean, it's swimming like in a catfish farm right now in the social discourse. This is the work of people who stand up for the very rich, whether or not they are actually fomenting cultural consensus, or whether or not they're trying to pass deals in Congress, or whether or not they're actually trying to um, open public goods for private gain, and socializing the costs and the pollution of such, but privatizing the income. So anyway, or also to the work of actually this narrow right shifted um, cultural consensus of our ideological spectrum is the work of folks that are strategically constraining it, on from basically the very middle, and Bernie Sanders is just on the edge of that middle, or outside on the left of that edge, to all the way out to the right. And we think we misname reactionaries as conservatives and conservatives as liberals. I'll get into that more. But this is the work of this is the work of people who have made it their life's work to help the very rich. And if any of you want to be a lobbyist for the big pharma, you could be very rich. If any of you all want to be a Republican political operative, or even a Democrat political operative that's actually loyal to the DNC, you could be very, very rich. If any of you want to do watered down diversity training, you could be consultants for large corporations, you could be very, very rich. Absolutely, absolutely. If any of you want to be, give the latest and greatest, educate corporations on how to prevent union actions, you could be really, really, really wealthy, probably more so than any of these guys. So yes, there is a lot of money in selling out the folks. If you wanted to run for office and say that the immigrants are the problem, but you want to take money from the private prison population to lock them up in violation of their rights, you could be you could get yourself a pretty sweet job as a lecturer, as a guest speaker, or as a board member of one of these places when you get out. So, anyhow, think about it. When we look at don't lose sight of the very, 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 very rich when we see these guys who are their enablers, and don't lose sight of the enablers when you see the very, very, very rich. I'm on to you, and I want all the rest of you to be onto them as well. Thanks, and more stuff from North Memphis later. Bye.